So is Officer Lopez going to join us, or?
He's at a doctor's appointment, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know we had some, for our team, we've had some conflicts, so they're going to be coming in later. Mr. Burke, Dr. LaCava, Mr. Mitchell's not going to be able to come at all today, so, but we wanted to make sure we, excuse me, we kept this meeting.
Okay. Are
Okay.
we recording it or?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so these are all of the articles that we have left open. And I think there's 11 in total. So if you just want to start with union business, Article 6.
Okay.
So I added the PBA may not use the boards to post political endorsements or for political advocacy. And that was a little different than what you all had in your last proposal. I think you had agendas.
No, I like that. That sounds fine.
Okay, and then a lot of these are your changes. So, and the one thing I did not put is use of time for our reps. So I don't know if you just want to say, if you all aren't open to a bank, if you want to just say that, you know, they can do it just only when they're on duty. So that's something that you guys brought up last time.
Yeah, that we actually try to be cognizant of not doing things outside people's contract day. I don't know that we really paid much attention to that, so it's something that's now going to be on our radar when we schedule these bigger meetings, because we always try with, you know, making sure it's within the teacher workday. There are times, though, that we do have them later because of other, you know, other scheduling conflict type issues of particularly if they have to be in this room. This room is kind of, it's easier to get now because of the COVID restrictions. We're not having as many meetings, but as that changes, and usually, you know, pre-pandemic and then post-pandemic, this room gets booked pretty quick. So like the calendar committee, that's not recorded, but we can have that, you know, that can be in another room, so that doesn't have to be recorded. But other ones like the Coalition Bargaining for Insurance, because PBA and CTA want that both recorded, we have to have it here. So sometimes it's just dependent upon the room, but we will keep that in mind and not try and schedule things outside their duty day.
Okay. And I think a lot of this was what you proposed. I took out that sentence in 6.5. 6.6, that's what you proposed. 6.7, that's fine. The link to the PBA website as a part of new employee orientation. 6.8, I did make some changes to this. I think towards the end, I wrote the school district agrees to furnish the association upon request such information as is necessary for developing intelligent, feasible, and constructive proposals. And then I included how you all worded it, but then at the end I said the PBA may not use the employee email addresses for email blasts or similar purposes without the prior approval of the superintendent or her designee, because we don't want to use your server, you know, and I don't think we intend to use it for email blasts or anything like that, but we do want the email addresses, and I don't think those are protected under Florida law, so.
So what do you mean by email blasts? I mean, what is that? How would you define that?
Like, we don't want to reach out to the unit as a whole. We don't want to use it for, you know, email blasts like what you all were talking about last time, where, you know, I think you were concerned with us just making it basically for our own, you know, just email blasts for anything general for the group as a whole. I think we would just use it very, you know, not often for individual people. We just want the email addresses, but we're not going to use it for, you know, the PBA's personal announcement.
Okay, we'll have to kind of look at that and see if we can do that or not. But I appreciate the movement on that.
Okay. And then Article 8, involuntary transfer. I don't know if you guys touched on this last time, but this 8.3, I just kind of freshened that up because I think that the reps were saying that this happens sometimes. So I put, if necessary, the chief shall allow for adequate time. And that should be for those officers who have been assigned to a different work location to relocate department and personal belongings to that new work location. So.
Okay.
And then 10, seniority, so we removed some of our prior language. I think 2 and 3, they go along with 10.2, which is the original language. And then this is where I added the new language for the seniority wheel. So this is just something I drafted, so you all can talk about this if it makes sense. I said the parties agree to use a rotating seniority wheel to assign department overtime and extra duty details. The seniority wheel shall be based on a list of all current eligible officers from most senior to least senior. The district first will offer the available overtime shift or extra duty detail to the most senior officer, regardless of whether the officer accepts or denies the overtime shift or extra duty detail. The district then will offer the next available shift or detail to the next senior officer on the list, and so on and so forth. Once the district has offered all eligible officers either an overtime shift or an extra duty detail, as they become available, the school district shall begin the process again, offering the available shifts and details to the most senior officer. So-
Okay. I appreciate that language as a starting point. I think we're going to have to tweak it a little bit, because I'm concerned I think if we've gone through the wheel once, then the chief should be able to just assign it. Because if everybody has said no, or there's not enough people, then the chief should just be able to assign it rather than keep going through a wheel. If it's something nobody wants to do, or there's some reason, and everybody just keeps saying, no, 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 it keeps going through the wheel, at some point, the chief needs to be able to just assign that, so we may have to tweak that.
Does that happen a lot where someone just doesn't take it? You guys do it now in practice, the seniority wheel, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Sorry, I was reading, I thought it says the breakers on 2 instead of tiebreakers. Okay, so I understand that.
Where are you looking?
In 10.1, subparagraph 2, I just didn't read that correctly. I was trying to figure out what breakers, it looked like the tie looked like it said the breakers, but it's tiebreakers, so.
And so for that, we took out, like vacation time, and
Okay.
now it coincides more with 10.2. And 3 really gives the chief more discretion too, so. And that's standard, I think, in what we have in a lot of our seniority articles.
Okay.
So, just so I'm clear, because I need to have a conversation with the chief around this proposed 10.3. So the way I'm reading it here is that the number one senior officer in the department, when we're in detail season, would be getting 15, 20, 25 details a day for them to choose from, because they have to be offered the first slot. And it's easy that we're doing 25, 30 details a day. So is that officer going to have to go through 30 details and pick one?
This just, Chief, pertains to 9004 overtime solely, not school-based overtime. This is just Department 9004 overtime.
Which is lease?
No, that's just like if you need, where we used to do, for example, remember, we used to do a Bravo shift overtime from your end of your tour to 2000 hours.
Right.
That's 9004 overtime.
Okay.
All the,
So you're talking about operational
Like the
overtime?
mud
Correct.
bowl?
Yes.
Where you guys assign the.
yeah, anything that the department does, like us at the school base, like Mike and I are at high schools, not extracurricular activities or leases. This is just solely departmental operational overtime, which I refer to code 9004, which there is not a lot of it right now, but years ago there used to be when we were shorthanded.
No, I understand, and thank you for clarifying it, but where I'm confused is,
Yeah, so we would have to scratch extra duty details.
you.
Yes,
that's where you were confusing me.
that's correct.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Because the way it's written, it
Yes,
has to get,
we just talked about that.
Okay, that's my mistake.
so I would
yeah.
even clarify it a little further and say operational overtime.
There you go.
Okay, and that's how you all do it now?
Can we put 9004 in there? Would that help clarify a little bit more for?
It didn't help me.
No, okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I think maybe we need to maybe define some of these terms, because
Or
even I have, after looking at this contract for 18 and a half years now, sometimes I even get that terms, the department versus extra duty detail versus the lease versus this. I think we probably need to define that maybe in definitions somewhere.
extracurricular activity and leases is all based I'm sorry, is all school-based activity or
Okay,
overtime.
so you would call those school-based overtime?
Correct.
So there'd be school-based overtime, this
Or is this
extra duty
operational?
detail, which is leases, is that right?
Well, no, extra duty, extra, some people use that terminologies. Yeah, it's the simpler way, if I made direct to it, the chief
Operational,
would be
school-based.
operational, which you would understanding what that is. Like I said, for example, when Bravo shift, my tour ends at 1,500 hours, and you need O'Sullivan the 2,000, that's operational
I
school
understand.
police overtime. Whereas a lease or a game, any extracurricular activity at the school, that's school-based overtime
Okay.
activities, if
Okay,
that
so then
clarifies.
what would extra duty details be? Is that school-based?
We could actually
Yes.
just strike that, actually, that.
We
No,
can
I wanted, because
That's correct, that's correct.
Okay, because we talk about that in bargaining, it's in the contract in various places, and I realize, I'm not sure even our officers all understand those terminologies, so maybe that's why I'm trying to get a handle on what those definitions are, so we can be more consistent in the contract.
So I think that, as the chief pointed out, operational versus school-based.
Yes, it's just
So you
simple.
all just want it to read department operational overtime?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
All right, so, and just to be clear, right, so you're talking about operational overtime, which I understand, and then you're talking school-based overtime. So school-based overtime, so let's just take for instance, right, so a football game that we need to cover. Now, there are two scenarios for covering football, well, actually, for covering sporting events. Football historically, recently, has been covered by district dollars and not school dollars. You follow me?
Okay, so but
Yeah.
it still would be this, I get what you're saying, but
Yeah.
it's still going under 1611, or like I'm saying, 1611's my school.
Yeah, it's still being
So it
billed
would
to the
still come
school.
under that thing. And we have, in the general orders, we actually redid the general orders this year to
Right.
say basically that you start within your own zone.
Sector.
And a sector, and then you work from
Yeah.
there. So that's already actually covered, unless it says, but you can direct us to do that. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah, so we find ourselves occasionally not having coverage on those events.
really?
Not,
I gotta tell you, I've never
either
never
have I.
had an
Well,
issue.
due respect,
Matter of
I
fact,
know.
I have
So,
people still calling
What do we
me.
do in the scenario that we don't have coverage? What would your suggest, I'm
At
trying to
that point, if we don't
understand.
have coverage, then we can direct.
yeah, can
it.
I'll answer that just from the years of doing it at the high school, is, for example, is if I do it to my sector, the zone, to the department, and I can't tell you the last time I ever hired Jupiter Police, but that was done probably about 3 or 4 years ago. So if I exhaust all my means and I still don't have enough personnel, then what happens is that we go to the local municipality to supplement us, and the school pays them based on their hourly rate.
All right, and so,
If we don't go to the outside, we can go outside of our sector to go get somebody also. So if once we exhaust all our things inside what the general order states us to do, I can now go outside of my sector and call Kevin up in Jupiter and say, hey, can you come down south and work for me here?
Right.
It's our responsibility, it's not your responsibility at that point.
well, so I'm going to
We've never had an issue that I have never had, or spoke to any one of the other high school officers about filling a thing, outside of maybe the muck bowl. But at the muck bowl, that's different because now it's 9004.
Yeah. All right, and I'm just going to, it's always going to be our responsibility to make sure those are covered. We may work with you to get it done, but at the end of the day, if you come up short, it's going to be the department that's responsible for covering those shifts. So, so with that, so this is good because I think we need, like Vicky's saying, we need to really be able to define these categories so that going forward in practice, we don't run into problems with definitions. So what I might even propose is that we do a definition for operational overtime that this possibly could apply to, and then all other overtime, and just not even get into the, the nuances of the types of overtime.
Yeah.
Because with the especially as it relates to this proposed wheel, there's only the two categories that were.
Right. Yeah,
So-
yes, correct, Chief.
So let
right.
me ask you this on that operational wheel. Now I'm kind of getting a better understanding of what we're talking about. So you're saying that if, I'm working an 8-hour shift, but I'm needed for 10 at my school, or for whatever reason, it's not because of some activity, it's just for operational purposes.
So a quick example would be, the officer's on the campus and ends up making an arrest that takes them beyond the end of their shift,
Okay.
that's operational overtime.
Right, but under this term, if it's a less senior officer who's arresting somebody, I can't just give him the overtime, I have to call in the more senior person.
No.
No. Once you start something, it's yours to finish. That's not how it's worked. We're talking about if we have a special event where they need operational overtime, like the Muck Bowl, for instance. That's something that we put on, that we have a normal event where we do 5 officers at a football game. At the Muck Bowl, we do 60 officers.
Right.
So there's not one person that's gonna go, so that's when it goes through the department, and they set up that whole, what we call an IAP for that thing. So
So it's like a district-wide
it's a
special event?
yes,
Right,
yes.
so-
Or it would be no different than a special overtime, even though ESU covers it, we know that it's ESU covering the board meetings.
Okay.
Okay, that's an understood.
That's why I'm a little concerned when we put this language in here because of what you're talking about. So like, the Muck Bowl would be considered part of that operational overtime, but we don't use the wheel, right?
No, you'd still use the wheel,
We'd use this wheel?
absolutely.
Okay, so then
Yeah,
the
we could
board,
use it.
the board meetings, we don't use the wheel for that
We
either.
don't, it's, and understand, that's what their design, that unit was designed for. That's not, we don't have no control
Right.
over something like that.
Yeah, but do you see why we have to be very careful about how we define all of this? Because,
We get that. and,
Yeah,
you
because
know,
I'm just trying to make sure that we don't have an unintended consequence, because, I mean, I think we would have an understanding at the table, but maybe an officer who's one of our more senior officers says, hey, I want to work the board meeting, that's one of these operational overtimes, nobody ever called me, and now I have a grievance on it.
So what
So
now
that's
do
why I
you
think we need to-
specifically use the wheel for?
just for operational issues, when we have to come out, like, when we had the protests, when they had to offer the protest, something like that, the Muck Bowl, things that are outside of the norm.
so let me give you a couple, because we've done it several different ways in practice. So we haven't really defined a specific way of doing it, right? So for the protests, what we did is we sent out an email, is anyone interested in working? And then the ones that said they were interested, we used them first, and then we were unable to fill additional positions. We started reverse seniority in that case because nobody indicated they wanted to work. So instead of wasting the time going from the top all the way down for every position, which made no sense, we just started from the bottom up because we already gave everybody an opportunity to say whether or not they wanted to work. So the wheel here would slow everything down in terms of filling those. And when we're talking about filling it for a protest or a demonstration or something like that, we don't always have a lot of time.
Right.
A lot of time it goes out the day before, the day of, and we need to fill 60 slots. So having a wheel requirement at that point is not going to be efficient, and it's not going to be workable, and it doesn't really get, because we send out an email saying who wants to do it anyway. And then we start working reverse seniority from the bottom up, because we already know that if you haven't responded, you're not interested. But we still have to fill the slots. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. From doing it, it does make sense basically on emergencies or that's exigent circumstances that you have brought up, and that's a fine example. However, again, I'll use the term historical perspective of this was when the department knew looking forward that for the month that we needed 3 bodies every day for the Bravo shift. That's what this was about. So they knew at the end of August, for example, that we needed this amount of people for September, then this would come into play because there's no reason why it should not come into play because there was ample time to do that. It was foreseeable. Where something like that, what you had done with the inverse seniority, I would have done it the same way. And nobody can argue that.
Okay, so I think we're open to exploring this option, but we have to be really cognizant of the fact that everybody has to understand what terms are.
Right.
And what they mean, and that the chief buys off on it in the end, and that it doesn't slow down the efficiency or effectiveness of operations.
Right.
Does that make sense, Vicki?
Yeah, and we have to really narrow down of when it's going to be used, because just in the conversations we're having, we're finding out, well, this is usually considered, operational overtime, but these don't apply. This would have to be worked a little differently, and so I get where you're coming with it. I understand that. I think we just need to,
Nail it
I'd
down.
like to see it very narrowed as to what we're really talking about.
I don't think this is gonna be an issue, and think that's something that we
Yeah.
can do on any time. I think we're all on the same page on it. It's just putting the words together.
Right, understood.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, we're not trying to keep the
And
more
yeah.
senior officers from getting
And
overtime,
we-
that's not our
we
intent,
understand
we
that
just
there's
need
gonna
to.
be- We understand that there's gonna be times that these things are not gonna be exactly by the letter of the law. They're gonna have to be changed.
Yeah.
I mean, we're
Right,
both-
but-
we've
but
both
at
been
the
in
same
business.
time-
We've both been in a position, I haven't been in a position as the chief, but is we do know when things need to be tweaked because of the situation. And that's not something, if somebody came to us and said, I want to file a grievance, we're gonna look at them and go, you don't have a grievance,
Right, but
you know?
that doesn't mean that, 10 years from now, where none of us are at the table anymore.
I agree.
This language is in here. Luckily, we have it on tape of what the intent was, they could use that, but at the same time, different people will have different interpretations, so we just need to make it, we already know that it's not as clean as it needs to be, so we need to just make it tighter so that it meets what you're trying to get at without
Sure.
That's fine.
bringing up grievable
That'll
issues.
save a lot of time down the road.
Yes.
12, we accepted, I think that's y'all's 12.1, and then 12.2, we kept the 12-month proposal for probation.
Okay.
17, I added, or not 17, but I think these are a lot of our original proposals. I know we're still waiting for the district's kind of counters to these, so
Okay.
I don't know if you want to
I mean,
go.
I know the comp time, the amount of comp time, I think 60 hours is excessive. I'm not sure when the officers would really be able to use that. It sets a false expectation that it's going to be usable. We have that issue in other bargaining units as well, where they're allowed to accumulate comp time, but then it's like, well, when can I use it? Well, you can't use it on this day, you can't use, so it's really limited, and then the employees get irritated because like, well, why are you letting me earn all this comp time if I can't ever use it? So that's why we're not inclined to increase that amount for that very reason. And then with the officers, they have an option that no other employee group has, which is selecting on a event by event basis whether they want comp time or overtime. The rest of the district, you sign a form and you just agree it's either going to be comp time or it's going to be overtime. You sign the form and that's it. You don't get to choose. That's the selection that you've made. They have an option, I think, annually that they can change it, but for the most part, you either earn comp time or you earn overtime. You can't earn both. So I'm a little concerned about that one, and it's not that, we're trying to be difficult. It's just I don't want to set an expectation.
But again, we're going back to the other, we are not the other units. We should be able to work that out amongst ourselves. If we can't get the comp time, that's the way it is. We understand
Right,
that.
but do you understand that we're setting up a false expectation for the employees that they
Actually,
can
no.
earn 60 hours of comp time with the idea that they're going to be able to use it when, I may hear from the chief, it's like, they can't use more than 16 hours in a year. It's just not going to, it's not feasible, given the workload, given the responsibilities, that
So,
we'd be able to give you time off.
This is negotiation, so let's,
Right.
what can you offer us something different in that? I mean.
No, that's what I'm bringing up, is that 16 is where we think is the limit for us.
I can tell you what, the direct challenge is that there's only so many hours in a year that we can provide services. And if we allow officers, particularly when we're understaffed, but regardless of the staffing level, we set up training that's required for the department, and we have people not showing up. So, we have enough of a challenge under the current circumstances to get people trained and to get them operationally deployed. If we start giving more flexibility for time off, we're just putting ourselves further behind the curve in a position where now we're creating a morale issue with having to deny more people more time off.
Well, you
That's
can
the
call
challenge
in
we have.
sick and do the same thing.
Well, you're only supposed to be calling sick if you're sick.
Of course, I understand that, but but somebody can call in sick instead of comp time.
Well, they can't, so I'm not quite, if they're not sick,
You still have time, you still have personal time, you still have other time that you can take off. So if they chose to take off during that time, it's no different than taking comp time.
except you're building up a bank of more time off that creates more vacancies on a per diem basis year-round.
You're just concerned because you're short-staffed.
It's not, it's aggravated by being short-staffed. We still have the issue even when we're at full staffing.
But when's the last time we've been at full staff? So we can't even really compare it to that.
Well, our staffing's changed over the years.
Yes, but we can't compare it to that. I know I've been here 4 years and we haven't been full staff since. So it
Well,
it
and I've
hasn't
been here
changed in
3 years,
4
and we haven't hired as many people as we've hired in the last 3 years historically. So it's an evolving environment. I think we both
But
acknowledge
it's
that.
going to continue to be. So even at 16 hours, that's going to be, and what you're saying is going to be too much. Because if I say, take my 16 hours and I wait till the end of the school year, I had 2 training days this year. I could have taken both of those training days comp time.
I
So
think there-
it's just a matter, you know what, it's never going to change somebody's work ethic. And what's right or wrong. We all know that. We've been in the business a long time. We know that. We talk about you only can call out sick when you're sick. Yes, that's true, but we know people still call out sick. I don't care if you're a policeman, a fireman, a teacher, whatever, right? But people still call out sick.
You need to do something, you're going to do it.
They're allowed to accumulate a lot more under the FLSA. And I don't know also the reasoning for you all wanting to change limiting it to code 9004 as well. So we kept that not limited to
I
code
can answer
9004.
that because as of right now, there's very little, if any 904 overtime. That means that no one would be able to incur this, because this happened years ago. I won't mention the chief's name, when we proposed this, and she made it 904 overtime, and I said we never would achieve that. So we've been through this already.
Can we have just a minute for a sec? Can you, just a minute?
just saw it, I got it 2 minutes ago. Everyone in favor? Aye. I'm sorry, just on tape, I shouldn't.
It depends on how these negotiate.
World for that job.
At least you got 2 votes over there.
They just don't want me here.
We could use our influence up here for you.
Well, anyway, okay, so we get back to work here. You know, I'll talk to the chief about, you know,
I
the
mean-
accumulation comp time, but again, you know, it's, when you set expectations for the employees and then, do we need to?
No, you can keep going.
Okay.
He's gonna answer.
If we set expectations, and I just don't want to feel like we're lying to employees, but we'll talk about it. I
Okay.
understand where you're,
Again, I want to get back on that too, and we get it too. I mean, my work ethic and Kevin's work ethic, if people got to understand the same thing, you know, these guys, they're going to call us and say, hey, we got a complaint, we didn't got our comp time. We're going to look at them and say, you can't get it. We don't just fold over and say, okay, just let's fight everything that we got out there. You know, we
Right.
understand the administrations and the operational needs of the department too. And I
One-
think we've squashed a lot of those things in the past, in the short time I know
yeah,
I've been
yeah.
on.
I know one of our concerns was that there were officers who were working the leases at a school or doing something at a school that would be in the school's budget, and then telling the school, no, just give me comp time for it, but then turning around and
Can't do
coming.
that.
Well, we've had that issue, so they've done it. So then instead of being paid the overtime from the school like it's supposed to be, then it comes out of the operational budget. So
Well, we
we'll
could
we'll
put
look at that and
in
figure
there,
out
yeah.
maybe a
that's a
way
coding
that we
issue.
can
Yes,
give
it is
you
a
what you
coding
need,
issue.
but still fix that loop.
You can't do that.
Yeah, that's a coding
What
issue.
will happen, I understand, but you still have to charge the school. It's still coming out of the school. You're just changing, okay, because you have the forms, it'll say comp form. And they'll ask you where on the comp form, where you're getting this comp time from. So on the comp form, it'll say, in my case, so say I worked 4 hours of a basketball game. Okay, so if I decide I want to make it comp time, I put it on there. It's still coming out of 1611, which is Santa
Yeah.
Lucia's. And it's just being comped that way. So there's still, the department's still going to Santa Lucia's and collecting the money.
No, the specific incident was with leases, and they were getting paid, they were supposed to be getting paid from the leases, and the officer says, no, I'll take comp time. And then that gets converted into overtime. So it changes it from a lease expense to a district expense.
Well, we could
That's-
put
that's
that in
what has
there
been
if that's
happening.
what the concern
Yeah,
is.
so that's something maybe we can work with you a little bit on and.
But at the same time, if it's a lease, it's still coming out of the school. So I have to still go to the school, I'm still putting down 1611 on the
Right.
school, even it's a lease, because they sign, the leasee pays the school.
That's right.
So what happens is then whatever I put on there is still gonna be, they're gonna have to pay.
They have
whatever-
to process the paperwork,
Correct.
so.
Yeah, but what you're missing here is that the school's receiving funds from the leasee. When you end up converting it from comp, because you hadn't taken it, and now you're putting in for overtime, then it's converted to overtime that the district is paying from, it's not coming from the lease. The school's keeping that money. You follow me?
Yes, yes.
So what's, short terms is that they're filling out the paperwork correctly at the school site saying I want comp time, but at the end of the year, I haven't used the comp time, I'm getting it paid out.
Gotcha.
That's what we're trying to
Oh, okay.
avoid.
Okay.
So that's, and we'll maybe come up with better language for that, come up with something a little tighter.
Okay, that
And
makes
that's more
sense.
of a
Yes.
management issue, 'cause
So
it's
then
not
therefore,
approving that.
I understand your issue,
Not
those,
you, but the supervisor shouldn't be approving that
yes.
anyway.
It
So
was happening
therefore,
under a
lease-
former chief, not under the current administration.
Right, therefore, the lease should not be applicable to comp time. I understand that, yeah, and rightfully so.
We don't have a problem with that either.
Yeah. Okay, and E, there was just a scheduling issue, I guess, because of the time that the calendar is issued, right,
Yeah.
guys? So that's why we made that change.
Okay.
Like, this year was a prime example with that, yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to look, because the reason why that it's in that way is for a budgetary purpose, because, you know, our end of the year closes at the end of June. So I'll have to check with Mike's team and see if that's something they can work with.
Okay.
Rather, it cuts their time off to get a lot of the things closed out. Because like our fiscal year ends June 30th, they've got to close everything out by that date. So that's why they push a lot of this stuff into early May, so that they aren't trying to pay things out in June. But
Okay.
we'll check on that.
And then I think all of these proposals were the same, adequate notice, 72 hours for a change in regular hours of work, except when there's an emergency. On-call, I think that you guys were checking on that as well for 17.5. 17.10.
Want to talk about the on-call issue?
So I think we need to get back with the chief on this. There may be opportunities for specific on-call, but we have to run it through the chief and make sure he's comfortable with when we'll be doing it. I don't think it's a significant cost if it's limited to a few individuals at a period of time. But again, we'll have to get back with the chief on the impacts.
Yeah, because, and we need to understand what that on-call status means. The fact that most officers are, by the nature of your work, you're on call all the time.
Yeah, I'll just give you an example. So July 4th, I'm on call that whole weekend. I'm on call every single day. Okay, that's from Monday through Sunday, every single day, and I don't get compensated for it.
What are you on call for?
For call-outs, anything after 5 o'clock in the afternoon, or 8 o'clock. On
So-
the Monday through Friday, up to 8 o'clock, and then on the weekends, after midnight on Friday night through Sunday, or it's Monday morning. So July 4th, for instance, while everybody was out having, I get called out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and go to an alarm.
So
Okay.
we have a roster for on-call, what you call on-call.
Correct.
For the after-hours coverage,
Yes.
right? And so when you're on that list, you're supposed to be picking up and going on that call. But we've had to go and exhaust that list in the past. So it's not really something that you're looking to get compensated for something that you can turn down.
Correct, but like, so for instance, so I'll give you, like, I work the south end, there's only 4 of us, and usually it's 3 of us. So what we do is we let everybody else know, guys, don't make any plans for the weekend because you gotta be available. We do that amongst ourselves because that's what we do. So I know last week that somebody was gonna be out of town, so I didn't make any plans to do anything. So
Right.
that other guy didn't have to worry. So when dispatcher's calling around, I was ending up going on calls up in the north end of the county. Okay, on those days, that I shouldn't have been. Those guys in the north end of the county, but they didn't take care of that business themselves. So if you're on call, you're on call. It's no different than the chiefs. They can't go out of town when they're from Monday through, or whatever it is, Thursday to Thursday you guys do. That's their on call. The detectives, when they work on call, those days, they can't make any other plans. But if I know I'm not getting compensated, you know, I mean, not me personally, but some of these other guys are saying, you know what? So what, I don't answer the phone, what's the big deal? I'm not getting compensated for that anyway.
What-
But what you're doing then is you're turning around and you're screwing your.
But
your-
you are getting compensated for the hours that you work, right?
Of course, yes, but I'm
Okay.
talking about when you're not making plans, so it's not, there's not the necessity to be home anymore.
But you're also getting a minimum call out.
Absolutely,
So
but,
you might be out for an hour and you're getting 3 hours.
correct.
So there's a lot built into that. So I think we need to go back to the chief. I understand what you're saying, and I think we should talk a little bit more with the chief about some of the guidance. And I have a couple of thoughts, and I'm not at liberty to talk about them here before I run them through the chief. So let me take that back, and I'll get with Vicky, and we'll talk about that.
Okay. And then 17.10. So this is what coincides with the general order. I don't know if you guys spoke to the chief about that. That's the general order that you all worked on last year. 17.11, we're still proposing $40 per hour for outside details. 17.12, we kept the same, so I don't know if you were also speaking to the chief about that for, if an outside detail or extra
That's
duty
one of
work.
those things that's it's hard to calculate the cost, because in talking to you, we got 2 examples, so I don't know if it's just twice a year that it happens, or if it happens every week, so that's one of those things that I would prefer that maybe we agree to study that and actually start collecting data on that, to determine, first off, where is I understand the problem, because I get it. I just need to know how big of a problem is it, and would this actually solve that problem? Or is it not going to have any impact at all? Because if the extra work is canceled, and let's say it's at a football game, and I'm going to use the example, I know you don't like me using outside your unit, but we have something similar for the interpreters for the deaf and hard of hearing. And the reason why they have it in there is because they have a lot of outside work they do beyond the school district. So if they've been hired by the school to say, okay, they have to be at the football game for a child who's deaf and hard of hearing, they've turned down outside jobs of going to the hospital to interpret for somebody, or going to a doctor's office to interpret, or doing something for the county. They've turned down those other jobs in order to get it. And then the kid doesn't come to the football game, or isn't there, and nobody ever tells them that they're not going to be at that event. And then they've turned down other jobs, but we know how frequently that happens, because there's a tracking sheet that ESE keeps track of. So we had an idea of, okay, well, how much is this going to cost us at the end of the day? And so that's a concern I have for here, of not knowing how much that could cost us, without having any real data to support that it is a real problem and how frequently it occurs.
I
So-
don't think it is very frequent, but when it does, I'll give you a perfect example. This past weekend, one of our officers had to drive out to the coast, West Coast, and for a 6-hour detail, got out there and found out the thing was canceled. So he basically drove out for an hour and 15 minutes, drive out an hour and 15 minutes back, to find out there was no detail.
Okay.
Okay, and that's just one example, and that's now, remember, when we do something for 6 hours, your whole day is shot. You can't plan anything for the day. So when something like that happens, you should be compensated somehow.
No, and I understand, I understand where you're coming from. I'm a little concerned about putting something in the contract where I have absolutely no idea how much it's going to cost the district.
Sure, but in something like that too, on a detail like that, it's not just those things will go towards the school who's taking the lease. The school's gonna end up having to pay for that. It's not gonna cost the district most of the time.
Right.
That's where our problem is. The district's not,
Well, we'd have to build it into all the lease agreements, and I would talk to the people who handle the leases.
Okay.
And unfortunately, like, our leases, I thought, well, okay, there's like a lease season where everybody signs in, maybe in July for the school year. They're not. They're signed on a daily basis, so we would have to start putting them in the leases on a go-forward basis, so that the lessee or the lessor is actually paying that fee rather
most
than us.
leases are paid up front.
Yeah, they're paid.
So they're paid up front already, so it doesn't make a difference. So now the school's keeping the money.
I'm not sure that's accurate, because we've heard ones
Okay,
where
I-
they're not getting, the school's not getting the money, you have to go back after the person,
Well,
the
if I may,
lessor
from my school,
lessee.
I know that our last two, I use the word night school APs, they get the money up front, so if the person doesn't show, the officer still gets paid.
Okay, we're gonna have to do, I mean, I think I do need to do more research on that.
We could maybe do a PBA poll too, just of our
Yeah,
members.
that would
to
be helpful
see-
if you had a poll from your membership of how frequently that happened.
Okay,
So it gives us at least some jumping off point, so Mike Burke doesn't scream at me for putting something in the contract that costs money when I have no idea how much it might cost.
okay, I'll talk to them about doing that.
I mean, it's our belief even to, if it happens one time to someone, like that officer over the weekend, because we got the text.
Look, I totally understand it.
Yeah.
I agree because,
Right.
you know, believe it or not, that kind of stuff happens to us here at the district,
Right.
where, you know, we're expected to be here for something and you find out it was canceled, nobody told you, or, you know, so things like that do happen. And I get it, like, you know, your whole day is upset. Could have planned something, but you didn't, or you could have gone to some event and you couldn't. So I get it.
Or
It's
could have worked
just,
something else, but you
it's
didn't.
just, I have to be fiscally responsible in putting things in the
Oh,
contract.
we understand.
Okay.
Okay, Article 18 leaves. We added your hours for 18.2, and we also added exclusive of overtime, and we still wanted to put 11 days or 88 hours. So I know you're waiting, I think, to hear back on that
Okay.
from Mr. Burke. 3, I think that's a lot of your changes for the pregnancy article. Again, we added the hours. For 18.2, the next page, we added, and this was in our original proposals, I think, and/or law enforcement for the carryover of FRS.
Yeah, we talked to that it can't be just any agency. It has to be an FRS eligible agency.
Right.
And so the way this is written, it would be any law enforcement agency.
Well, participants in the FRS.
As I think that that's what we do already. You know, in talking to the group that works that area, there was a concern, though, with a lot of our officers are retired from other law enforcement agencies, and as they retire, their sick leave, vacation, all that gets paid out. So I'm not sure what we're talking about here or how we would manage that. I'm just not,
I think it would be similar to everything else. I mean, if they're transferring it from, you know, the school system or, you know, if they're not able to under the FRS, then that would be one thing, but.
yeah, the other issue that Darnie's reminded me about is we don't get reimbursed by that other agency. We take on the cost of that. So if you're coming from, I don't know, another law enforcement that's necessarily, you know, let's say Boca is FRS eligible, they're not eligible, but let's just say they are, and you're coming from Boca over here, we take on that, we assume that debt, if you will, without Boca reimbursing us for it. So that's kind of a concern as well, by making it broader, that it does cost the district money to do that.
But I mean, they are likely coming from law enforcement agencies because they're law enforcement officers.
Right, no, and I get it, but, you know, we'd be more comfortable with status quo in that language for that reason, because it does assume, we do assume the debts of other agencies. You know, when we look at it, for a while, we had a lot of people transferring from South Florida Water Management over here, but then there'll be a time where there's a lot of people from here that transfer over to South Florida, and they kind of even themselves out. That's not as frequent with our police officers. Usually when they come here, they've already retired from somewhere else, they come here, and then when they retire from here, they don't go to other agencies. It's not as frequent as that movement, so
Maybe we could do a cap, if you feel comfortable with that.
maybe we could look at caps.
Okay, 9 is the sick leave note. That was your language, so we added that. 18.2.1, we added the language under D for the chapter 440. And then 18.2, when you look at the absence for illness and line of duty leave, I'm sorry, there's no page numbers, but the COVID thing I know was a concern, so I reworded it to where it can be included for in line of duty leave, which I think is when they get the extra 10 days of non-cumulative illness. So I didn't include the assumption that they assume or get COVID-19 at the workplace, but I did say that it could be included in the 10 extra days, and I don't know if that's something
That's the
that you-
same, that's the same problem that we had before. You're giving more rights than what's required under the law.
But are you guys still recognizing the extra days? You're not?
We're not. You know, you got those 10 days paid, that expired June 30th. We're no longer getting those.
Okay. Okay, I'll talk to the guys about that. And then the vaccinations, we just changed the language. Bereavement leave, I added number 2, that's basically what you proposed, but we did after upon return, just because, you know, that requirement for them to have to give that information, which they may not have while they're in a state of grief, we said upon return. And then, and then number 4, we added what you proposed about it being for only active employees.
I appreciate that.
C, personal leave, that was just that odd sentence, we struck that.
Okay.
And then 18.5, we kept, that's our same proposal for just changing the periods for which they're paid that attendance supplement to the calendar year instead of this district school calendar. And I
Okay.
think that you all were checking on that as well. And then Article 20, salary, so I don't know if you want to wait till you guys have your counters. This is basically all the same proposals that we had. We kept the performance-based pay plan. We kept the proposal about the 2 options for pay to coincide with what the teachers get. And the Glades area, we changed the language from Glades to West. So this is basically all of our same proposals with the 3.5. Article 28, definitions, this is the same proposals. We defined working day in the PBA. 29, progressive discipline.
Can I go, okay, never mind, you're at 20.9 now.
Oh, I'm proceeding on to 29,
I
but did
wanted
you
to
have a?
talk a little bit about the sergeant, before you move on to 20.11. So there's been no movement on your part of easing some of these restrictions for the sergeants?
No, I think that,
We can offer you something if we're gonna get something in return, though.
You got a 3.5% increase.
No, how about, I'll tell you what, we'll go, just because we're nice guys.
We're not
Well,
that
how about a
nice.
step plan for the sergeant?
Yeah, no, we're not doing step plans. So, I mean,
That's the way it negotiates. though,
well,
because
I
3.5,
understand that, but
everybody in
to
the-
me,
everybody in the district
negotiations
getting
really
3.5.
should be, you know, non-monetary for non-monetary versus monetary for monetary, you know.
But it is monetary. It's monetary for 30 guys, but it's not monetary for 300 guys. So it's a
Well, it's a
double.
special duty assignment, and that's what is confusing to me, is that you have a whole list of special duty assignments. This is the only one that requires a very expensive test to be taken.
Okay.
This is the only one that requires this level of education, and
But
so.
everybody doesn't have the same opportunity. See, that's the problem.
and that was our concern with
And that
the
was our
master
concern.
police
Correct.
Yeah.
So
program.
what you're doing is you're gonna be able to pick and choose. We had guys that were
No,
promoted.
no, I'm not saying that we take all the restrictions out. I'm not
And
saying that.
I get that too,
I'm saying that we put things in there, but things that are, one, not as expensive and hard to get at with the level of those, you know, the tests and that kind of thing, versus having something that's more, you know, and I get what you're saying, so it's not a friends and families program where I'm just giving it to the guys I like, that there are certain requirements for it, but they're not this strict. I think this is
It's not even strict.
this is more of like along the lines of what you would see in another type of bargaining agreement where that's a promotion.
And correct, and I think that's one of the problems to start with. I mean, it should be a promotion.
So then,
But see, what you're trying to do is create a rank that doesn't exist. This is a special duty assignment. We don't have the rank of sergeant as a promotional opportunity.
Well, what is your
This
proposal?
is a,
I'm baffled still, even though I've been here almost 14 years.
how a sergeant is not a promotion, even though it stays here, because this super.
The contract says it's a special duty assignment.
Yeah,
That's why it's not a
I'm
promotion.
talking in traditional, so this is what happens, because this is what happens is,
Well, can I just say, we didn't get, what is your proposal?
We had sent over a proposal previously striking a lot of this language, but we've talked about it a couple of times now where, looking at kind of what you were talking about for the master officers, one of the things that's, the examination is an expensive proposition. It requires additional funds in the department budget to administer that exam, to get to get that administered. There's special people who do that. So some of those things we'd like to take out, like the exam. But the line supervision course, as it's been explained to me, is that most officers don't get that until they've been given a supervisory assignment.
You couldn't get the position of a supervisor until you had that position before.
Right, and so that's where it kind of becomes a push and pull, is that in talking to Chief Alexander, he wouldn't send anybody to a line supervision course unless they were a line supervisor. He's not going to send out rank and file officers to take that course unless that's where they're going to be.
And that's traditional in policing. So if you know, most agencies will train you after you're promoted or get a special assignment. So a lot of them don't invest in the training until you've actually assumed that new position, whether it's a special assignment or a promotion. So it doesn't really matter from that perspective.
I'm willing to strike that after they take the test and they show they're the best of the best and deserve what they're getting, then send them to school.
So
That's-
you still want us to have to expend that money for a
Yeah,
test
but
for a special
this is what,
assignment?
I'm not going to be frank, I'm going to upset people, I really don't care right at this point, is that when we have people who are senior people come in here and they learn of this, they think of this place as being a joke, that they're going to have a supervisor. We have supervisors who have been here a very, very short time are going to, and thank goodness they're not like this, if they're headstrong, going to come into a place where someone who's been there for a very long time, and this person just literally walked in the door and tried to tell them what to do. That's what, when we have the senior officers that come from traditional agencies, that makes this department look very bad. We are just trying to make it look as a professional police organization, and it should be done by tests. Because when you don't, I still don't think this is stringent enough. Because what happens is in this, you're supposed to pass this test and then take 80. Then you go to an interview board and such, and there's politics that's played there. We had people who got knocked out of this because of the interview. Because when those other variables that come into play is nepotism, it's discrimination, and various things.
Right,
So-
but you still have that in there. That's still there.
Yeah, just take a test and get rid of all this other stuff that comes with it. Whoever,
Could the test be something that's created by the chief rather than an outside agency that comes in and does?
yes, as long as they don't give the answers away, which happened in an organization I
So
came
there's some
from.
security for the testing security. We
Yes.
have research and accountability.
Well, I'll tell you how they give the test. The chief knows they would call us down, those of us who are of the certain rank, to write up questions for the test, and then they formulate a test. So you don't need an outside agency to go through and do all this if you go strictly with a test. People can write
We'll
up a
have to
test.
talk more about it.
Yeah, that's not.
I think if you're flexible enough that we can create the test internally, it's an option we can explore.
Because it's
Because
strictly a
the-
cost issue.
Because the financial burden isn't there.
Yeah.
Because it could cost you tens of thousands of dollars to run one exam,
Yeah.
right? And then you have the issue of how often do you run it? Do you run it every year? Do you run it every 2 years, every 4 years? So that all factors into the costs. It's an ongoing cost.
And so
Right.
the test says that it's good for 24 months, but like AC Weiner said, how often do we give it? I mean, so that's, and I don't know that there's been any real schedule of testing of like, this is when the test's going to be. So, I think if we're going to do stuff like that, we need to have some kind of structure in it, because if we could have all this language in here and the chief just say, you know what, I'm not going to take anybody, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm just not going to give that special assignment. And then there's no requirement that he ever give a test. So then there's nobody ever going to be eligible. So, I mean, I think we need to tweak it a little bit so it makes more sense. I get where you're coming from, because I understand that you don't want it to be, it's not the current chief, but I know I can think of the chief when I first got here that would do that, he'd get mad at you, you're going to go work in the Glades. You know, he's not, you know, you want to be a sergeant, fine. I'm not going to let you be a sergeant. I'm going to tank your interview. I mean, so I get that kind of,
What you're basically saying, though, at the same time, you don't really think very highly of that position because you'd rather have a master police officer that's more educated and more
No.
seasoned
We-
than a sergeant.
you know, we brought the master police officer in, and then because that's new language, we don't say that that needs to be more stringent. This is the discussions that we want to have with you to understand where you fall instead of just saying we're not going to move at all, but to come up with some structures. And what we told you before is, you know, we can have performance pay and the attendance supplement and master sergeant, but the master officer, but we can only have the same amount of money. So, and you don't want us taking it out, so we may pull that master officer off the table because of just the, you know, financially, we don't have the ability because we're going to use the other money to create this other program that you had asked for. So we're still talking about those things. But I
Okay. So,
appreciate
well-
if there's some kind of, you know, and I don't know what it looks like, maybe, and I get where Kevin was saying, you know, about people coming in, but this requires 5-year service within the department, within the district. So to get the sergeant special assignment, it's not somebody coming in from the outside and
No.
just day one coming in.
No, that's what we're, on the unfair labor practice, the detective supervisors, some of them are brand new.
Well, because there isn't restrictions, it's a
Right,
special
but-
assignment, so
All right,
in
we'll
the
just have to
contract, it
talk more
doesn't
about
have
all
that.
that.
It's just basically,
requirements.
what I'm referring to is the insignia of a sergeant stripe. It's considered a sergeant whether it has a little diamond under it or not, and the perceived responsibility
Well,
and the
that's part of the
professionalism that's supposed
unfair,
to come with it.
that's the unfair labor practice,
Right.
and we'll eventually get to hearing. I thought it was gonna be
Well,
this week, but apparently not.
For
I
us to
don't
bend,
know, I don't know what your last proposal was for 20, because I don't think it was included in the last session.
No, but we've been
So-
talking about wanting to make changes to it, you know, because of the cost associated with that exam. The fact that maybe we can come back with something where the chief can craft the exam, that is some movement that we can make. So we'll continue working on that.
The
Okay,
only
and I
other
don't think we're
concern-
necessarily opposed to that, if it's just a cost thing and if it can be kept, you know, objective, but we'll have to talk more about the process.
The other concern that the chief has is with the 5-year continuous employment. When you look at the body of the officer tenure now, you're limiting to less than half of the workforce being eligible to even be considered. So you're excluding the majority of the officers from even being considered for sergeant. And I think maybe at some point in the past 5 years made sense, but we've got a lot of highly experienced officers that we recruit that have decades of experience, not only in law enforcement, but as supervisors. And so I understand there should be some minimum, but 5 years excludes more than half the workforce.
But if it's just a transfer and not a supervisor, I mean, you're putting a title on something that, first off the bat, it shouldn't even be just a transfer, it should be a sergeant's position. I know it's been like that, I still have 4 years here, and I can't figure for the
Yeah, I don't
life
know.
of me why that's not in that position. I mean, to me, it's utterly ridiculous, and it's downgrading that position, in my opinion. I mean, you got a guy that you're putting in that position for a reason. That should be, you know, then I would even be more leaning toward, if that was a permanent position, not a detective supervisor, then I could see maybe changing your structure around a little bit, because then you're actually showing these guys, hey, look, you know what? That's why you're in that position, okay? Because you are a supervisor, and you can tweak things a little bit around that. But just to give it up, and what you're asking is, okay, so we can still put anybody we want in that position. We can make sure that they.
But a lot of people are going to this and just sitting there, and it is a permanent thing, so we do
Correct.
want, you know, somewhat strict criteria, but,
Correct.
you know, we'll have to talk about what that entails.
And is it fair to a guy that took the test, you know, years ago and earned that position, now for somebody just to walk in and say, okay, you know, I'm in that position? And I know I'm exaggerating a little bit on just being able to walk in, but at the same time, it should be a valued position that's earned, not just given.
Understood.
And yeah,
think
just to
it's-
be clear that in the practice of law enforcement, and you may or may not know this, there are sergeant's assignments that are promotions, and there are sergeant's assignments that are assignments. And if you look at New York State Police as an example, they have sergeants that are promoted, and they have tech sergeants that are given the sergeant's position as an assignment. So they have both of those, so it's a blended. So to say that agencies only do it one way or the other, or that it diminishes the rank, that's not accurate.
Well, I respectfully disagree. When I see sergeant stripe, I think that's somebody who earned it through a test process and such. If I
It
see,
doesn't happen in every agency that way.
yeah, but that's why they have the internal stripe that they do in the New York State Police, is because of that. Because someone who didn't put hours into studying and spending, like you and I, thousands of dollars of going to class, and then this guy walks in and has the same stripe, that's why they have the issues that they do. Because I have a family member on that department. That's why they have problems. We didn't have that. We had quota
Every
lieutenants.
agency has its problems and its pluses, but
Well, we're
to
trying
say
to
that
avoid
it's
that.
only done one way is not an accurate statement.
All right, we'll have to talk more about that on our
That'd be
side.
the best way.
All right, so you were in 26.
Yeah, grievance, we pretty much kept it status quo, we
Okay,
just
so
added.
let me
the-
ask you, how do we solve the problem in step 2, though? Because the way it's written right now is that at step 1, the employee goes to their supervisor. The immediate supervisor has 10 working days in order to provide a response. The way in step 2, it says the chief has 10 days from the date they went to the supervisor. So if the supervisor provides a response on day 11, the employee then, has to have already gone to the chief and asked for that, because it's not taking into account the fact that the supervisor has 10 days from the discussion to try and resolve it. They have to immediately go to step 2 to meet with the chief of police before the timeline, before the supervisors even had an opportunity to provide a response. So we're not being true to the grievance process, which is resolving it at the most informal level first. In almost all grievances, it has that they go to the immediate supervisor. The immediate supervisor, let's say, has 10 days. Then they have 10 days at step 2 from the date at which that was due in order for them to say, I want to go meet with the chief. It doesn't give them any lead time at all to think about what the supervisor may have said, or maybe the supervisor convinces them that, hey, look, the grievance doesn't have merit, or the supervisor even agrees with them.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
That's
I'm
why we
fine
made
with-
that change in step 2, is because they overlap.
Yeah. And I don't even know if that's fine, you can make that 20.
Okay. Because that's all we were trying to do, is give that
makes
extra 10
sense.
days.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. And then the definitions, I think we're okay with, police benevolent being PBA, that's fine. I have a problem with the working day definition.
And what's that?
Well, we're still looking at possibilities of having different shifts for officers, because we do have events that occur frequently on Saturdays that maybe we have, and this isn't something we've done, but it's something we'd like the opportunity to explore, is that maybe we have officers that don't work Monday, Tuesday, they work Wednesday through Sunday. So that their regular workday is Wednesday through Sunday. Their weekend, as it were, would be Monday and Tuesday, or have some version of that to allow some flexibility for coverage, so that we're not having to have people on call all the time. So that's why we didn't want to have this definition of kind of a workday, because of the different shifts.
But I don't think we're gonna have to worry about that anyway. We can't fill our schools right now, so that's kind of
Well,
a moot point.
Right, but you're talking like right now, today. But this
I don't
contract
think- I
has a
don't see it
longer
happening,
life.
yeah.
I can't see into the future, but that's what our objection is to that.
Well, maybe we could just keep the second sentence then, as far as counting for deadlines.
To me, I think I like that, for counting the deadlines, we do that anyway. Because the deadline falls on Saturday or Sunday, I'm not necessarily here looking at my email to make sure you hit it. When we count deadlines, we do work days, and we look at the calendar as it's been proposed, so maybe we can come up with a counter that takes that into consideration.
Okay. And 12, I think, is just standard. And 29, it's pretty much what you all proposed. So we did your change for 1, discipline as described in section 8 below. 3, I said, you put excluding written warnings. I said excluding written warnings or non-punitive counselings.
See, well, I didn't want to put non-punitive counseling in here at all because it shouldn't be included or even thought of as being progressive discipline. We just had a long meeting on that with our HR managers for do the school sites, that counseling and coaching is non-punitive. It's about either explaining and giving directives so that they understand what the rules are, or providing personal growth or professional growth, uplifting them. So putting it in here, to me, gives it more of a disciplinary edge than it needs to be. Because it's not listed as progressive discipline, so if I find out that a supervisor, well, I counseled him, like, okay, well, you didn't do any discipline yet. We do that the same with the school sites for principals. They'll say, well, I gave them a memo, I gave them conference notes. I'm like, well, that's just telling them what the rules are. You didn't discipline them for that. Progressive discipline is in the contract. It starts with this step and moves here. So
We can take that out. I just know that we get a lot of members thinking they can grieve counseling, so it's kind of like a clarification for them.
Okay.
But if you want to take that out, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, we get CTA grieving conference notes too, but
And then
we'll talk about that a little bit.
8, 8, you all put recommendation for such action shall be made by the chief of police, and so that's the same as what you all proposed.
Okay.
And then I think that A is also the same as what you all proposed. Written warning, I think I reworded it just a little bit. Written warning which shall not be retained in the employee's district personnel file and may not be considered after 12 months from the date that the warning was issued. And then B, C, D, written reprimand, which is filed in the employee's personnel file. Suspension with or without pay with board approval, dismissal with board approval.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and then 30, duration,
All right.
which I did not put that last sentence because I just think it kind of conflicts with the whole idea of impact bargaining arises.
Well, it's basically the same zipper language that's in almost every collective bargaining agreement I've ever worked on. It just zips up, this is everything that we agreed to. It doesn't affect impact bargaining, because impact bargaining is something beyond, the district has done something outside the contract that affects the terms and conditions of employment. Under 447, you have the right to impact bargain, whether that language is there or not.
Also with MOUs, I think, it could be that, something occurs and we want to discuss what we talked about in bargaining, things like that. I think that we've gotten along without it this far, so we don't want to put it in there.
Okay, understood.
And then I kept the proposal for the article for workers' comp. Longevity, I know that's something that the district doesn't want to do, but perhaps we could put in language for discussing it the next round, when the contract becomes open. And then employee advisory group and master police officers, those are our
let me just-
original.
Can I go back to longevity for a second? This kind of program works in a agency where they can raise their own funds, that they can raise the millage rate, they can increase taxes in order to cover that. We are at the mercy of the state. We have a cap on our millage. We can't keep raising it in order to fund things. That's one of the reasons why automatic steps, and that's what this is automatic steps. That's why it came out. Because we can't guarantee from one year to the next that we're going to fund it. And that goes back to what I spoke to on the comp time. When we set an expectation, and you'll see that if you follow, like, teachers, when we're negotiating with them, they used to have steps, automatic steps that were in their contract. They went away through impasse back in 2007, 2008, sometime like in there. They'll still pull that old contract out and say, when I was hired, I was expected to be at this step, and this is where I am now. And so we have a whole range of employees who feel like the district lied to them. This is what was the step program when I was hired, and you've lied to me. we don't want to put anything in the contract where employees are going to come back and say, you lied to us. Because quite honestly, we'd love to do something like this for every unit that we have. We can't do it for teachers because the state says we're not allowed to award longevity. You can't have pay based on longevity for them at all. It has to be based on performance. But, you know, we would like to reward people as a recruitment tool and a retention tool to keep people here. But if you notice our budget and you look at when Mike does the budgetary presentations and you look at where we were, you know, pre-Great Recession to now, we're not in any better shape than we were during the Great Recession. You know, they give us more money, but then they dog-ear it and say, okay, well, that has to go pay for this and this has to pay for this. You know, and they'll say, well, we're going to take best and brightest out for teachers, but you're going to have to pay for it over here, and then they take it out of the operating budget and put it. So everything gets these categoricals attached to them. So while it looks like our budget goes up, they're really assigning, like, we're giving you more money, but we're telling you how to spend it. And it's never, ever for raises. If you've noticed that, the legislature never says, hey, let's give everybody raises. They just did it for teachers. They'll do it like in an election year, and it'll be like a little bump or whatever. But for the most part, for everybody else, they don't do that. So like, unlike other agencies, we would be setting up ourselves to lie to our employees, to have to go to impasse, to say, this year we can't afford this, that we don't have the money, we can't afford it. And that's why we've taken steps out, because we can't raise the money like the municipalities can. Like the PBSO can just decide he wants to give a 20% raise to all the officers. All they do is raise the taxes on the people in the municipality, and it's done. We don't have that luxury. We can't do that. So it's not like we don't want to reward the officers for staying. We can't. And maybe we can do it one year, but we can't do it the next. And so we'd rather put it into the base salary, the hourly salary when we get the money, than to put it into some kind of longevity plan that we can't necessarily maintain.
Yeah, but you're not gonna do that to us unless you give it to the teachers too, or to the bus drivers too, so
Right.
that's kind of a moot point. I mean, but when Mr. Burke sat here the other day, or at one of our sessions, and he said, well, we're just gonna shuffle around the monies a little bit to get the teachers their money back, because we still may have to pay that $50 million.
Right, oh, the referendum money?
Yes.
We're not even there yet. We haven't even come to that
Exactly, but
position
he-
yet.
but
We're
he's already
looking
figured
at,
out how he's gonna rework the monies to make sure that they get their money.
that is the goal, but it's not, that's Plan A. Plan B is we have to renegotiate the referendum money, because we're not going to have it. So if he can't shuffle because of other things that other requirements, like, you know, we're getting hit with a raise to our electrical, FPL is going to raise our rates. As gas prices go up, we have to absorb that cost as well. So if you think about it, you just filling up your tank at the gas pump and go, God, it used to cost me $40 a couple months ago, now it's costing me $50. Think about that with our fleet of buses. We have to fill those tanks, and we get hit with that as well. So they build that in, but every year there are things that go up that we can't control, or things we have to pay for that we can't control. And I don't want to set it up so that we're promising something that we know that at some point we're going to break that promise. And we're going to be at impasse because we'll have a financial urgency. We'll have to go to impasse over it and say we can't do this. And then we've got a lot of upset people because you lied to us. You agreed to do this, and you knew when you did it that you couldn't do it. And so like with the referendum money, we talked to them, and there's a clause in the MOU because we were concerned about, you know, sinking property values, because it's tied not just to sales tax, but property values as well. If property values take a dive, we're in a bad position. If people with the pandemic, property values held, but sales tax declined. So, you know, every time there's that fluctuation, we built it into the MOU that we would have to renegotiate should it be financially required. And so I know the goal is to hold the teachers harmless. That's the goal, that's Plan A. But there are other plans in place of B, of where, okay, what do we have to do in order to pay for this money that the courts are going to take away from us?
So you don't even want to put language in to discuss it in the next contract reopening?
No. We can't do it. We just can't do that.
So what is it gonna take? I mean, how long are we gonna be able, as a district, be able to pay outside agencies to keep filling our spots, because we're losing people at a massive rate. So is it gonna take, I mean, to go a different route maybe? Because this is gonna get crazy. We're losing, I mean, yesterday, I don't even know how many people put resignation letters in, okay? Within this summer alone, I can't tell you. Every agency in this country is now looking for police officers.
Correct.
Okay, and right now, I feel like we're being defunded, because we're not getting anything. We're getting our 3.5%.
Okay, that's
and
really inappropriate to say we're trying to defund you.
But
We're
I'm
just
saying,
not
there's
agreeing
nothing-
to give
we're
you
not
more
getting
money.
anything to retain our people. There's nothing here to, actually, you're looking to take from us.
Well, we do have the career ladder in place. It does have some longevity that's rewarded within that.
Okay,
So
but it's
there-
still at the same amount of money it has been since I got here. Since?
It's been like that since I've been here,
So it
2007.
hasn't
And the
changed
career
it.
ladder, the next proposal you'll see will have the career ladder actually in the contract versus a GO. Because right now, you don't have a lot of control over that because it is a GO. It's not in the contract. It talks about it, but it doesn't set forth, and we've had to look in several places to try and figure out the whole piece of that. Because it's not just in the GO, it's in some spreadsheet that your payroll people have to try, because even in the GO, it doesn't talk about what that percentage is. So we want to put that in the contract, and then that gives us an opportunity to then negotiate that. Because right now, it's not something you guys negotiate.
Well, maybe
So-
that's something we need to look at now. Maybe we can
Right.
negotiate that versus the sergeant's exam.
And we're going to put
See,
in,
that's maybe
well,
something we can look at, we can balance out then a little bit, because you know what? We can give a little on that if we get a little on this.
the next proposal you'll see will have that content in there on the career ladder, so it's clearer to the officers of what you have.
Are
But-
you going to raise, are you all thinking about raising the money for the performance pay to 300? Because I know in the master.
Not at this point, no.
Because in the master one that you proposed, I think that was 300.
Correct, but we were taking it from several places in order to get there, like you've accused us of doing. We're moving the money into a different program and then raising that a little bit.
So where was that from?
But I don't think of master officers, I don't think we had a cap in there yet. We were looking at, we thought it was about 300, which was the performance pay, and I think the career ladder of what we've spent in those two pots, and putting those two pots, taking both of the career ladder and the performance pay out, putting it into this master officer, but then you don't like the way we did the master officer, so we may just go back to keeping the career ladder and keep a performance pay. We still have to maintain that pot of money because, like I said, we don't have extra. You know, one of the reasons why, because it's taken us so long, the fiscal year closed out June 30th. It already closed so anything beyond what was set aside for your unit would have to be for the next contract. It can't be for this one. We don't have the money set aside for it.
So the 300 for the master police officers, that's what you put, that's from the career ladder and the performance pay?
Correct.
Okay.
And then when you said you guys wanted to keep the career ladder, you want to keep the performance pay, then we're going to talk about whether we even go forward with the master officer. We can't afford all three. So we were trying to make the best use of that money, because we've heard in years past that the performance pay really doesn't matter because your supervisor just, jerry rigs the evaluation, and so you're not entitled to the money, or they make it so you're entitled to money. We're just trying to make a better system. But you wanted to keep both, so that's where we're going to be.
Okay. And then the next two articles, those were just our original proposals. I kept them in there because, just in case we wanted to discuss them. And I know that the last chief wanted the employee advisory group, I think.
Yeah, we
So I don't
have
know.
language in there where you guys meet with him monthly
Yeah,
anyway.
so that's fine.
why
I don't think that, I kept it in there in case,
Yeah, this was
anyone
supposed to
wanted
be
to comment
something
on it, but-
different. Yeah, this is something different on Chief Kitzrow. It was his idea, but unfortunately never got off the floor, was to be able to have people, not just a bargaining unit member, but people he wanted to hear directly from the people in the field, what their thoughts and ideas on certain things. And it was a really great idea, but it just never materialized.
And Chief Alexander has been better about communication, so I don't think we need that.
Okay.
Have we ever came back with anything on the Garcia ruling too?
We have asked for some information from the police. I know Matt Baxter's been working on gathering information on how much time the officers spend with the dogs and spend with doing the things that they need to do. So we are looking at that. Hopefully
What
he'll
does he
get
come
that
up with?
soon.
I mean, that,
I haven't seen it yet.
Actually, if you recall, Major Baxter was out with a death in the family recently. And so he had a due date during that period when Riddick was supposed to get with him on some numbers. So I've just spoken with Major Baxter recently, and he said he was going to follow up on that, make sure he has the information to us. So as soon as I get it, I'll
can you
forward
send it to
you.
us too also?
Yeah, we'll get it to you as soon as we have a chance to look at
'Cause
it.
I mean, these guys are calling us and you know, and constantly on that, so.
Yeah,
That'll be
we're
part
gonna,
of
we're gonna
20.
obviously look at it. We just want to get some more data to determine again, being fiscally responsible, trying to figure out how much it's gonna cost and what we're looking at.
Okay. Okay.
I just
Well, I
wa-
think we made a lot of headway on, I mean, at least a few articles, so maybe next time we can TA, you know, maybe 6 in the grievance process. and
Okay, I
things
think
like that.
I think we can move, I think we can get some TAs. This will be good. We do need to set some additional dates. I don't think we have another one on the calendar.
No, we don't, yeah.
Okay, so I will let you know. I'll go back to my office and look and see what days this room is available and when we can get our team together and provide you with some dates. Maybe try and get a few more before school start.
Yeah, okay.
Because once school starts, we don't really want to pull anybody off.
Yeah, and here's the problem, so
in August.
we actually both go, Friday's our last day.
Yeah. I'll be
Not
out.
that, not saying that I wouldn't come in and compensate, of course, but I can make time to do it on, when I'm in town, but I'm gonna be out of town
I'm gonna be
some
out of
days
town,
too.
too.
I don't know about Kevin, but,
Yeah. Out the
So when
31st.
are you guys back?
we don't come back till the 9th.
I'm not opposed to doing it through Zoom either.
I'm not sure that our legal counsel will allow us
I'm
to
out of
do
town,
that.
I'm not gonna do Zoom.
Okay.
And our legal counsel, I'm not sure would allow us to do that.
I
So,
mean, I think we can if, I don't know about Kevin, I'm sure Alex is coming back.
Yeah, he's coming back.
So I'm only going away for this weekend coming up and then a couple, 3 days at the end of the
If
month.
Alex comes back, then I can just do it with Alex,
And
so
then
we
I
can
can, I can
Okay.
make, I can
well,
come in.
we'll send you dates and we'll keep that. It's just that first couple weeks of school, we're not going to pull anybody out because we need all hands on deck. We just don't bargain with anybody the first couple weeks of school
Okay.
because we
Well,
do
then-
need everybody
then
there.
Here's the thing, so if we're not gonna come back with anything that's gonna be, I mean,
Maybe we can TA over email too, but at least on, you know, if you get back to me on some of the ones that we pretty much agreed on today.
Right.
So,
Yeah, we can do that. We'll keep moving the work, trying to move the work forward. We'll get some dates, hopefully. If Officer Lopez is going to be here and you guys are comfortable with it just being, you know, Ms. Mendoza and Officer Lopez, then we can move that forward a little bit, move some. But, you know, I would expect that it will take, you know, the full complement of everybody here in order to you know, move, to get final agreement.
okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Appreciate it. You'll have a nice day.
Thank you.
Okay, you
Thank
too.
you.
Bye.